In this video, I'm going to share with you why the 50-year mortgage is probably the dumbest idea possible, unless you use this strategy to your benefit. Let's dig in. President Trump just announced that he wants to normalize a 50-year mortgage, and the internet instantly lost its mind. Half the comments say it's a gift to the lenders. The other half says it'll destroy homeownership. And honestly, both reactions make sense, because let's look at the math for a second. The average first-time homebuyer in America is now 38 years old, and the average life expectancy is just under 78. So if you sign a 50-year mortgage at 38, you're scheduled to pay it off at 88. That means millions of Americans will literally die before they ever own their home. On a standard 30-year mortgage, say a $500,000 loan at 6%, the lender already collects about $579,000 in interest over the life of the loan. Stretch that to a 50-year mortgage, and the interest haul jumps to over $1 million. That is double the interest for the exact same house, for a borrower who will never see the day the loan hits zero. In that world, homeowners aren't owners. They're just better dressed renters with a longer contract. The mortgage world flirted with 50-year mortgages in 2007 and 2008, just about the time the subprime bubble burst and the housing market came down with it. And if you haven't seen the movie The Big Short, watch it to see what was happening and what could happen next for us. A 50-year mortgage is a horrible idea if the goal is to help people get ahead financially and the logic is just pay till you die. But here's the part almost no one is talking about. A 50-year mortgage can actually be a smart financial move, but only if you understand how to use the structure instead of letting the structure use you. See, most people will take that lower monthly payment and they'll just coast, which is exactly what the lenders want. But if you take that extra cash flow and you apply it strategically, you can flip the entire equation. You can take a mortgage designed to last half a century, think about that, and pay it off in under 10 years. Hey, I'm Adam Carroll, founder of the Shred Method. I've spent years helping homeowners pay off their mortgages faster to free up liquidity and use tools like a HELOC to unlock wealth building opportunities. So today, I want to show you exactly how that works and why Trump's announcement could be an opportunity, not a disaster, but only for the people who understand the math. Here's some news context. Before I show you how to crush your 50-year mortgage in under 10 years, let me tell you why Trump's announcement exploded the way it did. Right now, buying a home in America is harder than it has been in more than 40 years. Prices are high, interest rates are relatively high, and there aren't enough homes for sale. So when Trump publicly said he wants to introduce a 50-year mortgage to make homes more affordable, the idea spread everywhere fast. But here's the real reason it became such a big deal. A 50-year mortgage doesn't really exist in the US right now. You can't walk into your local bank and get one. Most lenders don't offer it. And the big mortgage companies that buy loans from banks don't support it either. It'd be too easy for a homeowner to walk away from a house they have no equity in. The lenders just aren't interested right now. So this isn't some small tweak. It would be a huge shift in how home loans work in America. That's why it sparked a national debate so quickly. Because even if you like the idea or hate it, one thing is true. Some version of a longer mortgage is probably coming. In fact, if you've ever heard of a loan being modified, it quite often means it's been extended to at least 40 years already. The housing market right now is too strained and people are too stretched for this idea to disappear, which brings us to the real question. Let's slow down for a minute and look at what a 50-year mortgage actually does to your payment, because this is where most of the confusion online comes from. To keep this grounded in reality, let's just use numbers that are publicly available. Right now, the median home price in the United States is around $415,000, according to the National Association of Realtors. And for most buyers, especially first-timers, that's the ballpark you are shopping in. Now, if you put 20% down, which not everyone does, but it does keep the example clean, your loan amount comes out to roughly $332,000. And with today's 30-year mortgage rates hovering around 6.3%, your monthly payment on that loan is right around $2,056. That's the baseline a lot of people are working with right now. And that number is principal and interest, no escrows included. So here's where the 50-year idea sounds attractive, at least at first glance. If you took that exact same loan amount and you stretched it out over 50 years without changing the interest. Your payment would drop to about $1,823. That's a real difference. It's about $233 a month. And for a family trying to get into a home, $230 can feel huge. That could be groceries. That's part of childcare. That's breathing room for an average family. And honestly, if the interest rate stayed exactly the same, a 50-year mortgage would lower the monthly payment enough for a lot of people to qualify for homes they couldn't qualify for today. That's the version of the story that makes this sound like a solution, at least to politicians. But here's the reality we can't ignore. Lenders are not going to give out a 50-year mortgage at the same interest rate as a 30-year. They can't. A longer loan is more risk for them. It ties up their capital for decades. There's no established market where they can easily sell these loans. And under today's rules, a 50-year term isn't even considered a standard qualified mortgage. So when you hear people talking about a 50-year mortgage in the real world, you have to assume the interest rate goes up, not down, not sideways. Based on how lenders place risk, something close to 7% is probably much more realistic. And this is where everything flips. Because when you stretch the loan to 50 years and you raise the interest rate, the payment barely drops at all. Instead of saving a couple $100s a month, you're saving maybe 20 or 10, or in some cases, nothing. It's a tiny difference that comes with a very big cost. And the big cost isn't necessarily in the monthly payment. It's in the total amount you pay over time. Because with a higher interest rate stretched over 50 years, you cross $1 million in interest alone, even on an average home, which means the house costs more in interest than the price printed on the contract, sometimes 2 or 3 times more. So yes, there are 2 versions of the 50-year mortgage story. There's the clean, simple, lower payment version that works only if the interest rate magically stays the same. And then there's the real world version, the version where lenders adjust the rate upward, the monthly savings shrink to almost nothing, and the long-term cost explodes far beyond what most buyers realize. And that's why people online are panicking, not because the concept is evil, but because the way it would be priced in real life makes the payment barely move while the debt lasts an entire lifetime. And this matters because the structure is designed to keep people paying interest for decades, unless you approach it with a completely different strategy. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about in just a minute. Why most people will lose with a 50-year mortgage. The psychological trap. But the real danger with the 50-year mortgage isn't the math, it's the behavior. And it's the kind of behavior that's completely understandable because most people don't sit around studying amortization schedules or interest curves. They look at one number, the monthly payment. And if that number feels doable, they breathe a little easier and then they move forward. And just to keep things clear, I'm talking about the best case version of this idea, the one where the monthly payment actually drops. And even in that scenario, most people are going to grab the lower payment and think, okay, I can afford this, I'm good. And once a payment feels manageable, you kind of just stop paying attention. You settle into the routine, life gets busy, bills keep coming, and you just let the mortgage ride. Admit it, even you watching this today might have just made the minimum monthly mortgage payment for years, if not decades. But that's the trap, because on a 50-year mortgage, those early years move at a glacial pace. Your balance will barely budge, your equity doesn't grow the way you think it will. And then if something in your life forces a move, whether that be a job change, a growing family, or relocation, you're staring at a loan that looks almost identical to the day you signed it. And the thing is, this isn't unusual. This is how people behave even with 30-year mortgages. The average American homeowner moves every 12 years. That's it, 12. And the first 12 years of any mortgage are the slowest, most interest-heavy, least rewarding part of the entire loan. It's the stretch that the lenders profit from the most. So when you take a mortgage that already starts slow and you stretch it out another 20 years, you essentially guarantee that the homeowner will never escape the slow part. They'll spend the entire time in the portion of the loan where the lender makes the most money and the borrower makes the least progress. And that's why most people lose with a 50-year mortgage. Not because they're careless or irresponsible, but because the structure itself encourages passive behavior. It nudges people toward the minimum payment. It whispers, don't worry, you've got time. And when nothing feels urgent, when nothing looks like it's changing, people naturally drift into autopilot because it feels stable, it feels normal, it feels like everything is fine. Until you realize that you've paid for 20 or 30 years and the house barely belongs to you any more than it did in the beginning. That's the real psychological trap built into long-term mortgages. When the payment feels comfortable, you stop paying attention. And when you stop paying attention, the lender wins without even trying. But here's the good news, and it's a big one. The same loan that traps most people can become incredibly powerful if you use the lower payment with intention instead of just being on autopilot. And that's what we're going to get into next, the strategy, how to turn a 50-year mortgage into a 10-year payoff machine. All right, so let's talk about how you actually take a 50-year mortgage, which on paper looks like the slowest, longest financial commitment of your life, and turn it into a tool that helps you pay off your home in a decade. And honestly, once you see how the behavior works, the whole idea starts to make a lot more sense. And again, it's about the behavior. So let's keep the numbers real, again, so this doesn't drift into theory. Taking the same median priced home in the US, roughly $415,000, 20% down, you're gonna borrow about $332 grand. On a standard 30-year loan at around 6.3%, remember, the payment was $2,056. Stretch that loan to 50 years, keep the interest the same, that drops the payment to $1,823. That is a $233 difference, which on the surface feels enough to breathe a little easier, but not enough to change your life. And that's the key here. People underestimate what a couple $100 can do when it's used with intention instead of on autopilot. So step one is simple. You take the lower payment, but you don't start living like your mortgage suddenly got cheaper. You behave as if your mortgage is still around $2 grand a month. That $200 something you're not paying, that becomes the margin. It's your extra room. It's not glamorous, but it's powerful if you treat it the right way. And that brings us to step two, which is where the math really starts bending in your favor. Most people think the responsible move is to throw an extra 50 or $100 at the mortgage each month. The problem is, early on, that barely scratches the surface. Mortgages are front-loaded with interest, so little drips barely move the needle. Instead, you let that margin stack for just a few months, 3, maybe 4. And now instead of $50 drips, you've got $700, $800, $900 sitting there. And when you drop that as a single principal payment, it does something people don't expect. It knocks out the equivalent of 18 to 24 months of scheduled amortization payments. You literally skip ahead in the loan. Now we're gonna do that, not just every day, every week, every month. We're gonna do it 2 or 3 times a month. If life gives you a bonus or a tax refund, maybe you'll get a raise at work, a $3,000 or $5,000 hit early in the loan can erase 3 to 5 years of payments instantly. And that's not exaggeration, that's just how amortization works when you attack the balance instead of coasting on the minimum payment. Now this is part of the idea behind the shred method. It isn't about paying more necessarily, it's about paying smarter. It helps you route and time those chunks so every dollar lands when it creates the maximum drop in the principal. That's the whole game, using the structure that lenders built against the lenders. And then we get to step 3. This is the part that sneaks up on people. When you've been doing this for 2 or 3 years, something interesting starts happening. The loan stops behaving like a 50-year loan. The balance starts falling faster than the bank's schedule predicts. And once you break that schedule, it never recovers. The payoff timeline collapses in your favor. Here's what that looks like in real life. If you behave like a normal borrower and you make the $1,823 minimum payment every month, then after 10 years, you will still owe about $315,000. Think about that. 10 years of your life gone, and you've only shaved $17,000 off the balance. But if you behave intentionally, stacking that 200 some margin, dropping it every few months, and timing the hits, everything changes. After 10 years, instead of still owing $315,000, you're actually paying your house off. You've created hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity and not sacrificing decades of mortgage payments. Same income, same house, same monthly payment leaving your bank account. One person hands the bank decades of interest. The other person breaks the system that was designed to keep them paying forever. And that's really the big takeaway here. A 50-year mortgage only becomes a trap if you behave like a typical borrower. But the moment you stop drifting into the minimum payment and you use that margin intentionally, the whole structure flips. The bank's long timeline becomes your leverage, and you end up paying the home off far faster than you ever could with a rigid 30-year loan. It was never about the length of the mortgage. It was always about the behavior. So here's the bottom line. A 50-year mortgage isn't automatically a good idea or a bad idea. Though for the record, it is not great for consumers. I am not advocating this if you are considering just going out and buying a new home and letting that 50-year mortgage ride. Like President Trump, this is a tool. And unlike any tool, it can either work for you or against you, depending on how that tool is used. Used passively, it stretches your debt across most of your working life. But if used intentionally, it frees up cash flow you can channel straight into the principal and accelerate the payoff far faster than a 30-year loan ever allows. And once you see how quickly those lump sum hits reshape the balance, you stop thinking in terms of 50 years and you start thinking in terms of what's possible for your timeline. If you want help mapping that out, if you want to see exactly how your income, your expenses, and your mortgage can be rerouted into a payoff plan that actually works, that's where the Shred Method comes in. It shows you the timing, the sequence, and the cash flow patterns that make the biggest impact without forcing lifestyle changes. So if you're curious about how fast your mortgage could disappear with the right strategy, head to theshredmethod.com. You'll see your numbers laid out clearly and you'll know exactly what to do next. If you found value here, like and subscribe so you never miss another video. I'll see you in the next one.